Expand production. Welcome to Mindustry, a game about automation, mass production, and annihilation. Just thinking about industrialization is enough to make the human brain light up in ways thought impossible before fentanyl. And when you combine this with the idea of militaristic ventures, you suddenly have one of the most addictive games of the modern age. Today, I'll be playing through some of the campaign's levels, beginning my journey of world domination through mass-produced Chinese plastic tanks. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and ignore the 73 lawsuits for workplace endangerment that will most certainly put your factory out of business. Because today, we will be playing The first level plays out exactly how you would expect it to. I start by learning that you can mine directly from walls into your storage, something I will literally never use again. After mining a little bit of green shit, I discover the research screen, where I unlock the turbine condenser and promptly place it down. Then, I unlock and place the plasma bore, one of the most important pieces of the factory. Just like Factorio's drills, the plasma bore is what takes resources from their rightful owners and puts them into my hands, a process commonly referred to as income tax. In order to power the plasma bore, I needed this game's equivalent to the power pole, the cube. This thing is capable of transferring energy from one place to another without any wiring. How? Who gives a fuck? In order to get resources from the drills into my storage, I needed conveyor belts, which, while harmless at first, will eventually evolve into abominations. Primarily because of this, the duct router. While it is an incredibly useful tool by itself, I decided to use it to make this. Whatever it is. Anyways, it was time to acquire graphite, the second main resource of this game. Acquiring this resource is essential for mission success, because when combined with sand in a furnace and hit with the temperature of the surface of the sun, it turns into silicon. This is then used by the tank fabricators, which fabricate tanks. In order to begin fabricating tanks, we need to first start a process known as fabricating tanks. This is done so that we can later fabricate tanks to attack the enemy base with. After a bit of spaghetti routing, we have fabricated a tank, using a tank fabricator. So while waiting for more tanks to fabricate, I placed down the breach turret. The breach is a staple of any Mindustry defensive line, and it rapidly proves itself useful by being unable to defend an attack from 2 enemy tanks. What a hero. Anyways, their miserable attack is not left unanswered, and I immediately order a full-scale counterattack. And we've won! Now we have to fortify our newly acquired terrain. In a process known as colonization, I set up the necessary infrastructure in my units in defensive positions, because now we were on the defense. Yeah, no, that was a pretty shitty attack. But it's the first level. Things will get much crazier later on. Anyways, after a good amount of building, I decided it was time for another offensive campaign, through which I discovered the enemy actually has quite a lot of defenses. Oh shit. This only meant one thing. I needed more tanks. With the tank fabricators now ready, it was time for a full-scale army mobilization. And with that, we complete the very first level of the campaign, with a resounding victory. As a friend of mine once said, easy game, easy life. Blast off time. After landing on the second level, we are instantly given some free infrastructure. This, of course, won't be enough to achieve victory, so we must get to work expanding. In an egregious display of spaghetti routing, I managed to get 2 tank fabricators and a breach down. With my front line mildly set up, I then start working on extracting tungsten, a difficult to acquire resource that we'll need later on for more complex units and buildings. The tungsten drills require water, so my dumbass adds a fucking belt router to the water pump. Genius. Thankfully, I eventually realized that I needed to use pipes and not belts to transport liquids, and soon enough, the drills lit up like Christmas trees. Speaking of lights, there's an enemy base nearby, and it's got some pretty good defenses. I almost managed to take it out, but ultimately failed. After defending a small counterattack, I began expanding my production, and I really start wishing this game had inserters. More tanks means more silicon, so we also had to bump up our sand and graphite production. But a little beryllium later, and we've got a fuck ton of tanks producing. This is good. I like this. Anyways, we then built some turrets as I waited for the tanks to produce. I needed some defenses, and combined with walls, these should do the trick. Now with a complete army, it was time for war. And with that, we complete level 2. You ever wonder what happens when you mix hot lava in tanks? Well, let me tell you. They die. That's why this level is all about air units. Unlike tanks, flyers will ignore lava and can freely traverse over it. They also can't go over walls. For some reason. Anyways, we start the level by researching the ship factory. Or I would if I wasn't poor. Well, this is quite the situation. Before I get my flying units, I'm gonna have to farm up the necessary resources to research them. All while being stuck in 2 tiny islands, one of which is completely saturated with plasma bores. Fuck. Right now, my resource production rates were so shit I could barely even put down cliff crushers. But wait, it gets worse. Every minute or so, this little dickhead pulls up and shoots something. And each time I forget about him, he retargets to the only location on my base not covered by a turret. Anyways, after struggling to put down power poles, I had finally finished the beryllium side of the ship factory research. Now, I had to produce more silicon. So I made this thing. Engineer. If I wanted to expand at all, I had to deal with this son of a mother sucking piece of. And, even after researching the ship fabricator, I still didn't build any units. This is because I'm fucking stupid. What I did instead was I expanded as slowly as possible into this other island, using only turrets to cover my front line. Once we were on the island though, we had plenty of Oh, no, you fucking cunt. No, you get the fuck out of here! A little bit of spaghetti routing later, and we were successfully bringing in beryllium from our newly annexed island. This is called the British technique. Now with ultra boosted beryllium production, I figured it was time to put down those factories. Except, it still wasn't enough. Realizing the ships required silicon, I figured I would just add another furnace on the second island, resulting in some truly hideous compact machinery. But hey, after some infernal logistics, we finally built ourselves a ship. Time for some scouting. We quickly found the enemy base, and it's dead. Fuck. Since we required more graphite to produce flyers, I created this abomination of a belt, which is a strong contender for the ugliest thing you will see all day. And it only gets worse. You see, I suddenly realized there was silicon in the beryllium belt. Fuck. Now, I had to somehow look at this and figure out which part was feeding silicon into the wrong belt. Which I think I fixed. I don't know. Anyways, I opted to exploit a weakness in the enemy's base while attacking it. After doing the same thing like 7 times in a row, I discovered that the enemy had not protected their sand production. Now, with my units in place, it was time for the final, decisive invasion. Upon dropping into level 4, I immediately see nearby enemy presence. This is not good. This level's main gimmick was wave-based invasions. As seen on the top left of the screen, I had to survive through 9 waves, which meant it was time to begin fortifying. This time, I invested heavily into silicon production. After the compact chaos of the last level, I knew that I should absolutely use every inch of ground I have. The first wave was only one enemy, but I actually didn't even see him. I then proceeded to completely underestimate the next wave, which had not only tanks, but also mechs. The mechs are the deadliest enemy we've encountered yet. With their ability to walk over walls, they went right past my defensive lines with no problem. They were, however, no match for a water-cooled turret. You see, by placing the breach next to a turbine condenser, I had accidentally given it access to the water. This effectively puts the turret on fucking crack, making it fire 100 times faster. At some point, the enemy outpost back here got destroyed, and I, of course, took this opportunity to immediately expand my influence. The next wave also included some mechs coming in for backshots, so I knew I would have to fortify the second base before the next wave. Now that I knew how powerful water was, I kitted this breach out with a vent condensator. Unlike the power-generating condensers, this thing produces a ton of water. The next few waves had plenty of enemies, but with my turrets and a small legion of tanks, they were having a hard time dealing noticeable damage. At this point, they were even sending out a few advanced units, but now on the last wave, I knew my chance to attack was coming soon. As soon as I landed in level 5, I knew I was in for something. Seeing as there were 4 enemy cores to destroy, I knew I would need to get defenses and firepower up quickly. Not long after landing, I was already fabricating tanks. These of course required beryllium, but we had plenty of spots to drill from. Production is power, and in order to expand production, you need resources. So I set my tank out on some recon expeditions. Right now, I was focused on getting as much value as I could out of my spawn base. But not long after setting up some tanks in lookout positions, the enemies located me. And of course, skirmishes ensued. During this time, I had to effectively fight non-stop for control of areas, all the while balancing my defense and offense budget. Since there were no waves, my best bet was to set up a defensive line that could stand against the scouting parties of our enemies. And even though things weren't looking good, they were looking better. As you can see, I kept on expanding my defenses around major points of interest in the main area of the map. The enemies tried to deny me control of these resources, but over time, I had simply built too many defenses for them to break through. This means it was time to attack. Having taken out half the enemy resistance at this point, I figured it was as good a time as any to expand a little more. More space means more resources, which in turn means more production. Now, of course, my enemies did not like this, but despite their futile attempts at striking back, it was clear that they could no longer stop me. Now, we had gone from me being surrounded by enemies to the enemies being surrounded by me. They desperately tried to plead with me via my work email, but they had never considered the fact that I don't fucking check it. Ever.
The good book does indeed count war and evil, said Irving. Yet there's many a bloody tale of war inside it. It makes no difference what men think of war, said the judge. War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way.